Hi everyone, welcome back to art classes. I have just realised that I didn't put up a post just reminding everybody that I had art classes this morning. So I hope some of you can join me, and if you can't make it for the live version, then I will leave the video up on my Facebook page so you can come back to it, and it will also go up on my YouTube channel as well, so you won't miss out. And I realise many of you will be busy with your learning from home classes with your teacher as well. So you can definitely come back to this one when you have time. So today what we're doing is we are creating a watercolour painting, and we're going to be using some of our marker paint that we looked at last term, I think it was. So some of you might remember that I gave you a tip that with your old colouring markers, rather than just throwing them away, you know, when they get all dried up, or when the nib gets pushed back into the actual plastic part of the pen, or if they get all scruffy on the end, then what you can do is you take off the cap and you pop your markers into a container with the nib part facing down, and have your colours collected. So I've got all my purples and my reds, my oranges and my yellows and my greens, and then add a little bit of water, okay? Leave them to soak, maybe overnight might be best. That way you'll get more of an intense or brighter colour, and then you can start painting with them, and it's lots of fun. It's just like using watercolour paint. So if you don't have many of one colour, maybe just find a smaller container. That way you don't need to add as much water. So let's get started. So what I have got today is I have got some A4 paper, and I have my marker paints and paintbrushes, and I also have a pencil and an eraser, and I also have, oh, did I mention masking tape? Masking tape, and I also have some circle templates, so different items that you might find around the house or the kitchen, or even in your toys as well. So what we're going to do first is I have got a piece of board underneath. What I'm going to do is I am going to stick my paper down with masking tape. What I'm going to do is stick it down so that I have got my masking tape laid halfway over the paper and half onto the board. Now, for those of you that have done watercolour painting with me before in the classroom, I'm sure you will remember, you should remember, sure you will remember why we do this. There were quite a few reasons I remember you guys listing. So one reason is that it keeps our paper in place so it doesn't move around everywhere. Two, it actually helps to keep our paper nice and flat while we're painting and while the paint is drying. And another reason is that it actually creates a lovely border once our painting is dry. When we peel off the tape, we end up with a lovely white border around the outside. So masking tape is down, and I won't get rid of this masking tape roll just yet because we may need it again. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work out my composition. So my composition is working out where different components of my painting are going to be within this frame. So I am going to use a large circle template to come into the corner, and this is going to be my sun. Next I'm going to use a yogurt lid, and I'm going to pop it over here. I'm going to trace around it just lightly because we don't want to see our pencil lines necessarily at the end. So lightly around, and this, I think it might be a curtain ring that I just found. So that's a small shape, and I'm going to put that just there. Now, I would hold this up, but it's attached to a really big board, so it might be a little bit tricky. But I've got a large shape coming in here. So this is going to be my sun, And then I've got a medium-sized circle over here. This is going to be my planet Earth. And then a small circle is going to be my moon. Now, to make my sun look more sun-like, so that it's not just a smooth edge, I'm going to do some bumps. Now, these are just random pointy bumps that you could think, oh, they're kind of like waves. So they're just random, up and down. Yes, they are like waves, and I've got some short and some tall, just to keep it nice and random. So it'll kind of look like the sun's flames. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rub out that initial pencil line, because I forgot with my first painting I did of this, and now I can see the pencil line, and it's annoying me a little bit. So I'm going to rub that out. Now I am ready to start with paint. Now I'm going to start with red, and I'm using a thinner pointed paintbrush and a thicker paintbrush. If you've only got one type of paintbrush, just use that paintbrush, okay? You don't need to use different sizes. It's a matter of just using what you have. Now with watercolour, as the name would suggest, it's very watery, so it's a very runny paint. Now I'm going to use the point of my paintbrush to go up into the points of the shapes that I just drew. So using the brush, using the shape of the brush to help with my painting. Okay. Now, another thing with watercolour is what you want to do, if I have got more colours that I want blended in with this one, is I need to keep what is called a wet edge. So see along here, if I leave that for a little while, it will dry. And once the edge dries, it won't then blend into another colour. You'll always see that line. So I'm just going to keep coming back and just giving it a little bit more paint. And remembering to keep my paintbrush relatively filled with colour. So I want to try and keep a fair bit of paint on my paintbrush. I don't want it to get all dry. You know, when you sometimes, you can see that you need a bit more paint on your paintbrush and it ends up going all streaky. We don't want that to happen. Okay, so making sure I've got my wet edge. So I've got that there. I'll put that brush aside. You can see how I've been testing out colours there. That's always lots of fun. What you can do is when that dries, you can come back and you can turn them into creatures. Okay, so my thick brush loaded up with paint. I'm just going to add it around here. Doesn't matter if I paint slightly over the masking tape, because once it dries, we'll be peeling that off. Now I'm going to add orange. Red is one of the colours that makes up orange, so they work well next to each other, because they're next to each other on the colour wheel. Okay, orange is done. Now yellow for the very corner, which is kind of representing the middle of my sun. Okay, there is my sun, all done. So I might move those colours out of the way, because I don't think I will be needing, oh, I might be needing that yellow. I might bring the yellow back again. Just remembered. Now with my moon, I am going to do a little bit of yellow, like so. And then I'm actually going to add a little bit of purple, which didn't really turn out purple so much. It's more of a grey colour, but that's okay. It suits my moon just fine. So there it is there, and because it's a little bit brighter than I would like, I'm going to use a scrunched up tissue and just dab it gently, and what that does is that removes or lifts up some of the paint, so it actually makes it a bit lighter. Very useful for mistakes if you add a bit of colour where you don't want it. If you get to it quick enough, then you can usually soak up most of it with a tissue. Okay, so that's my sun done and my moon. Okay, so I don't need the yellow anymore. I don't need the purple anymore. Now, my planet. I am going to make it planet Earth. Kind of look like planet Earth. So the main colours of planet Earth green and blue. So from memory, I'm going to try and work out what planet Earth looks like. So I may not get all of our countries in the right spot or the right shape, but that's okay. Now I'm trying to stay inside the circle. It's very hard with a big brush though. Okay, oops, a bit more paint. And I might do a little bit of the Arctic Circle up there. And then we might come over and do some of North America, Central America, South America, and maybe this shape can maybe represent Australia. It's a little bit distorted, but that's okay. It's down the bottom of the planet. I didn't really leave any room for Antarctica. Oh well. We are spinning on our axis. That's why we can't see it. Okay, now blue. Blue in between. Now with my other samples, I actually left that to dry just a little bit because I didn't want the green to blend in too much with the blue. When you actually put two colours next to each other when they are wet, you will have remembered when I did my sun, two colours next to each other when they're wet, and they actually bleed into each other, which can be good if that's what you want. Sometimes not so good if that's not what you want. So see how they're bleeding into each other? Oh, I need to put that within the frame, don't I, so you can see it. Okay, so we'll just add blue there, and you can see how it's immediately bleeding into that area. Okay, so that's why I'm leaving this just to dry just for a smidgen. Then I will show you one that I prepared earlier. So I might just move these out of the way for now. So you can see that I've got lids that I was using for circles. I was even considering the bottom of this water container, even the inside of the masking tape roll. So you'll find circles everywhere in your house, okay? Lots and lots of places. Rightio. Oh, where did I put? Oh, I put it in with the green. That was a bit silly, wasn't it? Okay. That's right. It'll be a greeny blue colour now. All good. Righto. So let's add my blue for my planet. If you go over the edges onto your green parts of your land, it won't matter. A little bit of bleeding between the two is okay. Bleeding is what it's called when the two colours run into each other. It's called bleeding. It's not really hurt or anything. Okay, a little bit more. You can see some areas are dry, and that's what I mean by a dry edge. Okay, so that's what we were trying not to get when we did that one, whereas this time we do want it. Okay, just add more water. Coming around here next to Africa, next to India, and top of Australia. Okay, there we go. So you can see I've got my planet. If I tip it up, it might end up dribbling down everywhere. But you can see that I've got all of my objects all ready to go. So for the next step, I'm actually going to pop this away so that it dries, and I'll get one out for you that I prepared earlier that has this area dried, ready for me to add my background. Now this one, I'll hold it up for you, it's nearly dry, not quite. Okay, so you can see my sun, you can see the shapes that I was talking about. Okay, this area is still wet down here, but that's okay because we'll be painting the background, which that won't actually affect. And you can see how my planet, my Earth planet, has actually bled into each other from the land and the water. and there's my moon. So what we're going to do now is we're going to paint the background, the sky, and we're going to do something a little bit different with it once we're completed. Now for this background I'm going to use blue and black paint. Now with the paint we do need to work relatively quickly because of what we'll be doing to the paint once I've finished painting the background. So we need to work efficiently, but we need to try and work carefully. So we paint around our planets and our moon and our sun. Now remember, we need to load our paintbrush up again so that it's not too dry, because we want to keep wet edges. So try and paint in as close as you can with a steady hand, which is a little bit tricky. Okay, so I've painted around that one, and I'll paint around my planet Earth. I can tell with my planet Earth, I probably didn't let it dry that much before I added the blue water to it. So painting around. I'm not too worried about there being a slight white line around there, guys. You can make sure you paint closer to it if you like, but I'm not too fussed. I actually like a bit of white showing through my watercolour painting. It tends to brighten it, but you do have to be selective, I guess, as far as where you want to leave your white. Now making sure I've still got my wet edge. Now, I think I might leave this bit until the end. Now I'm going to add some blue now with my bigger brush, and I'm actually just going to be careful that I don't go right up to the black, because I don't want to then get black in with my blue paint. Because I keep coming back to this paint and reusing it, I don't really want to infect my colours. So I'll come up close. Oops, you can see I got very close there. It's starting to bleed in. I might add black now. The black I'm not so worried about getting a bit of blue in there because, oh look, I've got a dry edge in there. Because black is obviously a darker colour than blue anyway, so it'll be able to handle having another colour in there, and it won't affect the black too much. Now around the edges, again, won't matter if you paint over the masking tape too much. Oh, my blue might have dried a little bit, that's okay. It's looking too circular around my planet and my moon, so I just better add a little bit more black coming out from it, make it look a little bit more random, I guess. Now I'll add a bit more blue around the top here. And fill in the rest black. I decided to use blue and black together because the black I thought was just going to be too dark and too all the same, and the blue on its own would just look like sky, it wouldn't look like space. So that's why I've used a mixture of the two. Now again, you can use the shape of your brush just to come down between our pointy parts of our sun. Okay, you can see how I'm just coming in, laying the brush slightly on its side so it's a little bit more angular. And that creates that lovely shape that goes into the gaps. Okay. Nearly there. And then I can show you the last part of the process, which is a bit exciting. And then the final finale, where I get out another one that I created earlier. Okay, so we do black around the edges. More black. Having it darker around the edges also helps to emphasize a frame as well, which is why I'm just coming back over them again. Righto. Now what we are going to do, I'll leave that one in there, I'll pop that over there. Now, you'll notice that I've poured paint on my hand before. Never mind. Now, you might have noticed that I had salt sitting here. Salt is going to create a little bit of magic in the background. So I'm just going to pour some into my hand, about a teaspoon. And then I'm going to sprinkle it over my background. You don't need to sprinkle it over all of it. You just sprinkle it over areas, okay? And you'll be able to see what it does shortly. So just areas. Now I think with my other one, I think I ended up using about 2 teaspoons of salt. So I'll just get another bit in my hand. And you can't really see me very well. Not doing so good with my camera angle today, I don't think, guys. A bit more salt. Okay, a bit more over here. Now, what the salt is actually going to do, it's actually going to absorb some of the liquid. So once your paint dries in the background, the salt will no longer do what I'm wanting it to do. It will no longer absorb or suck up any of the liquid watercolour because the watercolour will already be dry. So that's one of the reasons why we're working so quickly then, is so that I could get my salt on there while the paint was still wet. Okay, so you can see in some areas it's already soaking up some of the liquid watercolour. In other areas, you can see that it hasn't quite soaked it up. So we don't want to do that over the whole painting. We just want to do that on parts of the painting because that hopefully will give us a little bit more of a space feel. Any ideas, guys, as to what this might do? How do you think it's going to look like with the big reveal? We are about to find out. Okay, that one is all done. So what I need to do with that, it's really important now that you put this aside and you let it dry completely. If it's even still a little bit wet, then the next part of this process, you're just going to end up smudging paint everywhere. So it's really important that you let it dry. And it's also a good idea to make sure you have clean hands. Okay, fingers crossed that mine's completely dry. I'll pop this one away. And I'll bring the other one over. Here it is. Now, I'll hold it up for you slightly. I'll probably pour salt everywhere, but that's okay. So there it is. So you can still see all the dried salt on there. Now, let's see if it is dry. I think it might be. So what we're just going to do is we're just going to slightly rub it off. Not slightly rub it off, we're just going to rub it off, but we're just going to do it very gently. And underneath, it should reveal that it's going to be all splodgy and look more like space, which you can kind of already see in all of those gaps. So, oh, that still feels a little bit wet. Oh well, this part's dry. Oh, look at that, it's like another galaxy. Okay, rubbing it all nice and gently. Now I might just pour this onto the table, clean that up later. So you can see it a bit better. Yeah, see, and if you add the salt to the areas where there's lots of watercolour, which you can see there was here and here, it won't work as well because there's going to be too much watercolour there. If there's a pool of it, too much watercolour for the salt to actually absorb. So I was trying to mainly keep the salt to the higher areas where there wasn't as much paint being collected. But you can see what it has created. Now this is a really good effect for not only space paintings but also underwater paintings as well. I've done this in some of my classes where we've done some underwater paintings and it worked really well for that too. Okay, rubbing. Yeah, these bits are a little bit wet still. You can also tell that it's a little bit wet still is because the paper is still buckled, so it's still a bit wavy, which means that the paper is still damp. Okay, now what I think we might do, rather than staying here for ages with me doing that, I am going to peel off some of this masking tape so you can check out how it looks by leaving the masking tape there. So if you don't have any timber board, you might have some thick cardboard that you could use, or maybe the back of a chopping board in the kitchen, if you're allowed. Better check first. Okay, one part of my border. Oh, now when you're peeling the tape off, don't peel it up like this because you could rip your paper. Hold it flat onto the board. Okay, hold it flat and at an angle. Okay, and that way you're less likely to get any rips or tears on your painting. Okay. Okay, there's that one. Oops, a bit of my salt's collected there. Look at that lovely white border. Now, this last one, hold it like this. Peeling it off, flat on the board. There we go. Ta-da! Space painting. Okay, there you go, guys. There's the complete painting. Oops, make sure I get it non-wonky on your screen. Okay, so you can see that galaxy turned out pretty well. And another little thing with black markers, you'll notice that sometimes your black markers are a little bit blue or a little bit purple, so that's going to create really nice colours when you actually soak your black markers to make paint. Okay, there's my space. Have a go, guys. It is lots of fun. You might want to add more planets, or you might want to do an underwater scene using some of those tips that I just showed you. I would love to see them if you have a go though. If you can post them in my comments or private message me. For those of you at school, you've got my email address, so you can send them to me that way. But I would love to see them, see what you come up with. Okay.